Welcome to another episode of Out of the Woodwork podcast, brought to you by Axminster Tools with me, Sean Evelegh. In this bonus episode of Out of the Woodwork, I talked to Alan Stiles, Managing Director of Axminster Tools, and his predecessor, Ian Stiles, his uncle. This year marks Axminster Tools' 50th year, which has seen it grow from a small, independent high street tool shop to a global mail order and online retailer, with 8 stores UK-wide. Woodwork continues to sit at the heart of what they do, striving to support the creative community by offering the tools they need, the knowledge they trust, and the committed service they deserve. So, Ian and Alan, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
No worries.
So this year is a very special year. It's the 50th anniversary of Axminster Tools. And in this episode, I think it's a great idea to look back on all the key milestones that took it from a small high street shop to where it is today. Where did it all start?
Well, I suppose really probably woodworking's been in the blood for a long time. That's our love. Back in the turn of the century, it was a company called H.E. Miles who came from High Wycombe, and that was my grandfather. And all my grandparents worked in his factory, and I think that probably installed woodworking into us. However, my father really was a draftsman and engineer, and we started life as engineers. We'd moved from High Wycombe to Seaton in 1967, and it was idyllic. It was just beautiful. After a period of time, the company concerned, Evelegh, who got taken over by Rakel, decided to close their facility and wanted everybody to move from Seaton back to Windsor. And my father said no, he wouldn't do that. He was very well paid by this company, and it was a bold decision not to move back to Windsor, but he'd taken a lifestyle change and had moved there. So he set up business with a chap called Graham Brown after a number of different jobs, which he didn't really enjoy. They had nothing to do, and they owned this shop or rented this shop, and decided that they would start a business called Stiles and Brown, which sometimes is still the parent company. So that's the brief start of it, though. Although he'd been made redundant by Rakel, we started by making a lot of the mechanical fixtures which featured in military radios. And we were very busy with doing that. That's the start of Axminster Tools, which was called Stiles and Brown, and it was known locally to people as power tools because we had these little sticky labels which were pricing labels, and we couldn't get Axminster Power Tool Centre in it, so we just put power tools on it, and because all the local people called us power tools, which is rather different than maybe nationally, which I think they probably called Axminster these days. So that was probably the start, I'd suggest.
So what were the type of things you sold in this high street shop?
Well, we didn't start a shop for a while. We were engineers making products. But in the first days of not having anything to do, my father and brother went to a army surplus auction, and they bid on all sorts of strange things for £5, only to discover that they had bought irons, Wellington boots, fans, all manner of different strange things. And not just one or two of them. For £5, they'd bought something like 300 fans. For £500, they bought 1,000 pairs of Wellington boots, which weren't matched. They were just in this government surplus cage after cage after cage of Wellington boots. So we sold Wellington boots, fans, vacuum cleaners, and very shiny irons, which were very, very good quality. So they were the first things we sold, but we were manufacturing then afterwards. And people would knock our door and ask us, can I buy some drill bits or whatever? And after a period of time of the feast and famine that Rakel provided us with work, we made the bold decision that we would become a power tool retailer. We started to sell other things such as more drill bits, and it slowly started to take off. We were one of the first people to sell Makita tools in the area. And we advertised in Farmers Weekly Makita grinders and cutting discs. And we used to send a lot of cutting discs out all over the country because they weren't easy to get hold of back in the early 70s. Probably a little bit later on, we took an agency for kitty woodworking machinery and coronet wood turning lathes, and that was a step change, together with DeWalt machines, radial arm saws, bandsaws, dust extractor, that sort of thing.
So was it much later on when you decided to create your own range of tools?
Oh, very much later on. So in probably about 1980, we decided to focus more on mail order, and we placed adverts in the various magazines. My father was in charge of the adverts, and inflation in the late 70s was pretty high. And so he put the advert in. We expected tons and tons of mail because it was a great advert, what we thought so. And nothing really came of it. We even ran to post offices, if they got a bag of mail, they were waiting to deliver. Nothing really happened. We made 1 or 2 sales, and we weren't able to respond very well. And then the advert came up for renewal. My father said, "Oh, you better repeat it." And he was always one for putting things off a little bit. And inadvertently, over a period of 6 months of leaving the advert the same advert, he kept the prices the same. But of course, inflation had struck by, could have been 15% almost in those days. So over that period, we were then offering a 7% discount. Discounting in woodworking in those days was an absolute no. And the phone started to ring, and we started to sell a huge amount of stuff. So that was probably around about 1980 to 82, something like that we started to really, and that was with coronet woodworking, DeWalt, Myford metalworking lathes, Myford woodworking lathes, all of those sort of things. That's the first step, if you like, into mail order. And one of our directors, Andy Parkhouse, joined us as a very young 16-year-old lad. And he's still with us, and he was part of that process of setting up the mail order. It kind of just happened, really.
Yeah. Was it around the 1980s where you started the Axminster show?
No, that was probably a little bit later on. We Kitty woodworking machinery, which is a pretty interesting range of woodworking machinery. Used to complain to us that we didn't do any, we didn't have any shows, we didn't do any open houses. Well, if you customers will remember that the shop wasn't much bigger than this actual room we're in today, and we didn't have space to do an open house. And eventually they said, "Oh, of course, people are having open days by they're renting the scout hut and doing this." We said, "Well, maybe we ought to." So we decided we'd have our very first show, which was at the Axminster Guildhall, and Alan's mum and my mother did the catering. They made coffee and made sandwiches, but we never expected the millions of people who turned up. It wasn't millions; it was probably about 5,000 people into a very small space, and it was just it was quite amazing. At one stage during the exhibition, the shop, because we kept the shop running, had a queue coming down Charles Street, people waiting to go into the store. But that was probably the first time, and it was hugely successful. And we did it a number of times. And then in 1995, when we built our new premises at where we are today, before we opened it up or populated it with stock and offices, we used the space to have an exhibition, and that was okay. But we hadn't allowed for all the car parking, and we offended all of our to-be new neighbours by blocking the roads, and people parked everywhere. But it was still a good exhibition. The day of setup, we had 2 inches of snow, and it was so unusual, and we just don't get snow. And I thought, oh no, where did this come from? But it went, and the exhibition was a good success. So, and then I think it moved on from there to Bath and West Showground. From Bath and West Showground to
it was a huge exhibition.
And by that time, it was becoming a huge exhibition. We lent. Alan was the organizer of the exhibition. It took so much time to organize people coming in, And we had external people come.
Sovereign Exhibitions, wasn't it? I can't remember how we got in contact with them, but I think they did one of the other national exhibitions.
Yeah, they were doing the national woodworker shows, and we really needed people on the ground who understood how an exhibition of that size worked, because we had near disasters of being too busy. But then thereafter, planning it, getting all the spaces where it was going to go to, Alan took that over, and that was a big job one year.
It was a few years. It was, yeah. It was. In the end, we got quite slick at it, but in the early days, it was sort of meeting with all the suppliers, coming from all over the world, trying to get staff from everywhere. We were pulling in people from all over the place, and I think at the end, it used to be. It was a lot of work. It was sort of month or two's preparation. Yeah. Something like 12 Arctic loads of stock we had to take down from here, and then sort it, bring it all back, and all our suppliers coming in. So yeah, but it was great.
So you touched on the premises move. How long were you in the original high street shop for before you made that big step?
Well, from 1972, where we had half of the shop, and there was an antique shop next door, and eventually the antique shop people retired, and we took that over, and then we bought the premises over the road, and we built some warehouses, a warehouse to end all warehouses, which are now houses actually. But we used to have 42 deliveries in the main high street, and we caused an awful traffic jam in the high street. One day my brother was offloading a lorry with a forklift, because we'd actually got to that stage of investing money in offloading rather than carry it all off. Anyway, we'd unload 42 lorries every day, and never be big deliveries, really. And one day my brother just turned around for whatever reason to find behind him, he was about to reverse, an elderly lady had collapsed on the floor, and he thought, this is time we moved from here. So he came and told me it, and we explored buying a plot, financing it, and we moved out to Millwood Rise, where we are today, and that was 1995. And the building was £695,000, and that was an enormous amount of money in those days.
Was it a big step moving, or was it an easy decision?
Oh, it was an easy decision, but it was a big step, and we had so much space we were going to sublet 2/3 of it. But as we decanted the stock from the shops and the houses we'd store stock in, we filled the warehouse, and we bought from BT a whole load of racking, and we started to put everything in its place. Because previously, before, when you got an order, you went and looked for it by chance, whereas our move, we wanted to actually stock control everything, so you could look on a computer and see if you actually got the stock there. So it was a big step change for us, and that was 1995.
That's the building we're in now. So this was some of the storage, wasn't it? And then through where the contact centre was the picking and packing area, and it's obviously grown a lot since then. It's been involvement.
It was a big step for us, and because at Christmas we used to get very, very busy, and even with our move here, we used to have to stop taking orders on the 12th of December because we just couldn't process them all there, and that was until we changed how we worked, and when we automated it with building, really, which we run with today. So the automation of our warehouse was probably one of the biggest steps which we ever made, and it's a conveyor system which runs through the whole of the warehouse, and driven by barcodes and orders. And it stops in different locations and eventually ends up on the packing desk. And the conveyor doesn't run very fast, does it? And everybody thought that we actually had a speed controller, and that when we got busy, that we'd speed this up. And it still runs at the same pace today as it does. I think it takes 13 minutes to go from one end to the other if you were to stop at all junctions, all stations before it gets packing. Made a big difference.
It did, massive difference, yeah.
There's a point in our old transition, and I had a conversation with my father, which he came up and said to me, how many parcels have we got today? And I said, we're 26 parcels. It took a number of trips around to the post office with a sack truck, which, it's probably about 400 yards away. And Dad said something like, where do you think all this is going? I said, that one day we'll have a room and it'll be just full of benches, and there'll be lots of people packing parcels, and that's all you'll be able to see in this room. And I think it did happen, and then we actually made it more orderly. We fed from the automatic picking into benches where people packed, and still today we pack a good number of parcels and packages, and they go out actually in most instances on an overnight delivery, and they're very prompt. It all works remarkably well.
Out of the Woodwork is brought to you by Axminster Tools. Nobody is more passionate or knowledgeable about woodworking than us. A market leader in mail order tools and the machinery industry. We offer a friendly and personal service to many thousands of woodworkers around the world. Whether you're a trade professional, a business owner, an education leader, an amateur DIYer, or a hobby enthusiast, we share your passion. Discover more from Axminster Tools. Just visit www.axminstertools.com. So since you've moved here, the expansion has been really quick. In 1996, you invested in a CNC manufacturing facility. How important was that step?
Well, previous to that, and going back to probably about 1982, we had had a number of people who made things for us at home in a kind of cottage industry style. And we were making many of the components for our four-jaw chuck with two very accomplished engineers. And for a long time, they made all of our components. Locally, there was a company called Axminster Precision, and this was owned by Mr. Vincent, Mark Vincent, and Mark still works for us today. And they hit upon hard times. We purchased them and took on their two hard-hinge automatic machines and a whole load of other old machines, which we positioned in our warehouse, the warehouse to end all warehouses, and became our machine shop. And that was the stage where we started to manufacture. We then continued to invest, and probably not long afterwards, we purchased Mazak CNC machines, and we got stepped away from the hard hinge, who were a slightly different machine. But the machine shop grew and grew. We were very disappointed to find that everything that we made was being copied in China. So we made the bold move to really increase our batch sizes and to compete against China. And I think today that we can manufacture in the UK at a price that is very comparable to the prices coming out of China, which is testament to the team who work on that, and an investment which repatriating products that we should rightly make in the UK is something which we have been really moving forward with.
Massively, and more now, because it's becoming even more challenging to bring stuff in, and we've got a big opportunity to export it. So yeah, it's going really well at the moment. And
people like made in Great Britain around the world, and we control our own destiny. We control our own quality. We have an amazing team in our manufacturing division, and I think, as far as a shareholder, this is something where we really want to move forward with, and it will be very interesting over the next coming years of some of the things which we have planned, and the expansion of our business in our unique propositions in our own brand. UJK is probably one of those major transitions.
Yeah. And it's also important to you to create jobs in Axminster and keep it all local.
Yeah, we do a lot. We need people in locally. We do a lot of outreach with schools, apprentices. We do a lot. We bring a lot here. Work with Exeter College, who are a fantastic college, and Bridgewater. But yeah, it's really important. We need apprentices in all sorts. But yeah, we've always done it. I mean, I guess I was the original apprentice with my dad and my uncle, my granddad, and worked all our way through.
And at what point was the website launched?
We were a bit green about email. We had one computer that had email on, but we had an employee who was very forward-thinking, And we worked with a company who had a website which was a shopping mall, and we had some pages in there and sold some items. And then we worked with a company from North London who created our own website, and that grew and grew, and then eventually some of our team who were working in a marketing department put their hand up and said actually they knew how to make websites. Actually, it turns out he's my son-in-law. And that team exists today. So using Magento, we started a new level of website which interacted well with our software. There's always distances to go. There's always changes to make. I'm not quite certain what the platform is today.
Yeah, still Magento.
Still Magento, is it? Or a derivative of Magento. Yeah. It functions well and interacts well with our system. But I'm guessing, like everything, the change is always happening in e-commerce, social media, and I hope that I think that we're pretty much on providing an information platform as well as a sales platform. Very difficult to compete in this world. It's a tough market out there. There's a lot of people now are able to access websites and create competition. So that's why I think we've taken a niche in art, which is primarily woodworking, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And we've always been about, when we had the catalogue prior to the website, of course we started with stores and exhibitions, and it's always been about, trying to share that knowledge. I mean, what we're doing today is about sharing knowledge of the industry, and the other part of our website is trying to show people how to do things and to give people insight. And we try and do the same with the products as well. So we're getting all of that sort of thing across. But it's always been there, hasn't it? It's sort of that knowledge sharing has just grown and grown. And I mean, we forget the catalogues. I mean, the catalogues had a lot of information in there, and we were probably the first to do that.
Yeah, there were things like Sargent's catalogues and Garrett Wade catalogues, which we absolutely adored. But we made a decision probably about 1992 to invest in the infrastructure to put a catalogue together. And that was an interesting process. And we didn't know how to distribute the catalogue. So we phoned up the woodworker and said, could we sort of strap our catalogue to the outside of the woodwork? And they went, yes, certainly. How much is it going to be? And they said, well, I don't know, probably £100 per 1,000. We went, oh, that's fine. Not realising that, they would have 50,000 copies going out. So we sent out 50,000 copies of our catalogue for not a lot of money. It cost them an insane amount of money because their distribution was by post. Their post rates went up money. They said they weren't going to do it again unless we paid the proper rate. But it got a lot of catalogues out. And that was the very first catalogue, black and white catalogue. And the whole catalogue was less than 50 megabytes. Well, I mean, I think that some pictures these days are 50 megabytes, let alone a 320-page catalogue. And
we wrote it. I mean, we wrote most of it. I think Tone and you and Andy wrote. I mean, there was differing styles of how we wrote, which is quite funny. And a lot of the photos. And we used to take photos, and we used to even develop them. We had an in-house, what do you call them, a dark room. And
that was before the days of digital.
Before digital, yeah.
Affordable digital.
Yeah, and then we used to scan all those photos. It was quite a process. So things have evolved massively since then when you look back.
And the thing with catalogues is prices change all the time.
Yeah.
New tools come out. So was there issues with that, always updating it?
I mean, more so now. I'm sure a lot of people know we don't do the catalogue in quite the same way because products change all the time. Prices certainly change, and more so at the moment. But and we've got a lot more online. So it's but people still like to look at print, and we are looking at different ways to get things across because you don't see the range on a website. I mean, it's evolving all the time.
We've always had good fun. I think when you're working, if you enjoy what you do and you make it a little bit of fun, it hasn't always been fun. Sometimes it can be a bit of angst. But in the main, I think, and especially going back into the early years, we had tremendous fun with my father and brother, who both have a wicked sense of humour. and so lots of happy memories of silly little jokes, which we did then. But
I still hear them now.
Yeah, they still keep coming out. Yeah.
And you like supporting, and supporting people and encouraging people into the craft.
Yeah.
Like your stalls aren't just a place to buy tools. You do demonstrations there and beat the boredom workshops for the younger generation.
Yeah, I mean that's we like doing that, and right through the ages, so like you say, as a beat the boredom, trying to encourage children just to pick up a tool, which they don't do in school now, obviously with a bit of supervision with their parent or their grandparent.
I think that change is about to happen back into schools, maybe. I'd like to think it did.
I really hope so.
It's starting to, and I think there's now a realisation that there's a skill shortage. There's a lot of good in using your hands. It's good for your well-being. It's good for your creativity. People are realising the trouble is if people trying to get people to teach now, because there is that skill shortage is the challenge, I think. But there is some good incentive behind it. And I mean, with our stores, we're doing that. We've got the hobbyists as well, of course. We're doing wood turning things in the store. And then we've got professional stuff like having demonstrations from Festool and that sort of thing. We try and cover the spectrum right through from people starting out, children starting out, right through to sort of small industry. And that's in-store people on the road as well. It's sort of grown from that starting of knowledge and getting that insight. And digitally, it's quite a small industry. There's lots of commonality. It's quite a nice community, woodworking, and the suppliers we work with as well. I mean, there's sort of worldwide suppliers, but there's always a lot of contact and connection, which I love. I think it's always good to get a different insight from different people.
It is good how one store, one company can guide you from starting out in woodworking. And I imagine people starting out will get the craft machinery, now newly branded as the workshop range, and they could look at the trade and the professional range and work towards that, and then it's and you can guide them on that path, which is really good.
Yeah, it's always tricky because you don't know when that person comes in and what stage they're at. So you don't want to be telling someone how to do something when they can probably tell you how to do something, and then you've got the other end of that.
We're quite nervous about asking. They're at home alone in the workshop. They watch millions of videos by YouTube, which is a godsend when you're doing anything, how to. And they are self-taught. And they are worried that someone's going to turn around and ask for their credentials almost and go, what are you a good enough woodworker to buy this tool? I think you'd be surprised at the amount of money that people spend on tools. I'm sure they never tell their partners how much money they truly have spent on this mice. So my wife doesn't know. And I think that's also another point. It's now gone to, it's not just a male-dominated market. There's a lot of people, a lot of ladies who are also very interested in woodworking. Lady in charge of our power tool sales, she's a very, very keen woodworker. Sarah Critchard, and I've seen more and more people become very talented because they probably have a better artistic input than a lot of men do. But lots of things happening. As I say, it's not just a male-dominated industry any longer. And again, Ryco, I guess, proves that as well.
Yeah. Out of the Woodwork is brought to you by Axminster Tools. Having spent the past 50 years working with makers and creators, we understand the importance of providing the products you need, the knowledge you trust, and the committed service you deserve. As a British retailer, we're proud to support British design and quality. We take particular pride in the manufacture of our growing range of own products at our state-of-the-art facility in Axminster. From concept and design through to production, everything is done in-house. For more on our own grown products, plus top quality tools from around the world, visit www.axminstertools.com. You touched on social media there, and like in stores, you like teaching. How big of a role has YouTube played with Axminster? Because I know the woodworking wisdom, and I think probably COVID it's affected a lot of people in very negative ways, but it's also the craft industry. I think a lot of people have been starting DIY. And I think the woodworking wisdom has really benefited from that.
Yeah. I mean, we've always done a bit, but it was more, sort of product quick insight videos. These rooms here were where we used to do the courses, and we've done courses forever. Even in the old shop, we used to do wood turning courses, and we've done those for a long time. People loved them, but actually COVID came along, and we thought, well, okay, what we're going to do? So we started the YouTube content, and it's just grown and got worldwide followings, and it's been great for us. I mean, people are asking, are we going to bring the courses back?
I think probably our strongest area is wood turning.
Yeah.
We have two of the world's finest wood turners, Colwyn Way and Jason Breach, and that is a huge audience that watch those guys. And of course, on YouTube, if you don't quite get it, you can just go backwards again. I mean, I've learned a huge amount on YouTube.
Yeah.
There's some bad stuff on YouTube. You've got to be careful. We always think, well, okay, we've got to get it right. We've got to make sure the safety's there.
I've heard people even teach themselves to plaster. But woodworking is, there's some great stuff on YouTube, and I hope our content continues to go out.
Yeah. Jason and Colwyn are fantastic. I've been lucky enough to have a one-on-one with both of them.
Yeah.
And even if you can't have a one-on-one in person, the woodworking wisdom and the wood turning they do is helping so many people, and people getting into woodworking and showing also the younger generation it's an option, something to do. I think Colwyn was telling me how he thinks now is the best time with social media and more young people, because it used to be seen as an old people hobby, but now I think younger people are trying it out.
It's a craft, isn't it? Yeah. Which I think that and of course because they can self-teach, that's good. Classes, we used to do a chair making course a week, and I tell you, if you went on that course, we set the first one up, and all of the teachers went on the course so that we could deliver the course. I have never been so tired at the end of the week, but so pleased for the chair that you could sit in as a Windsor chair, and that was a great course.
It's a good, and there's so many techniques in it, because you do a bit of turning, you do a bit of sculpting, a bit of steam bending, obviously the gluing, the joining, there's so many elements to it. And
you've got a chair at the end of it.
You get a lovely chair at the end of it. I think we've both got one in our houses.
If you do the Windsor chair course again in store or wherever, I'm really keen to do that.
We're going to do an online one.
Well, the online one is good enough.
The online one would be really good, because there's lots of aspects that I had never really thought about. Sightlines, how do you actually get the splay on that chair so that the legs all come out like this? That was.
I think what's really nice about it, Ian started off with our early connection to furniture, and they made Windsor chairs, didn't we?
We made Windsor chairs, wheelbacks, which is a traditional beach chair, utility chair, really. So-called Windsor chairs, because the chairs were taken from High Wycombe and loaded onto boats at Windsor, which was the shortest route, and so they became known as Windsor chairs. They were probably utility chairs. They didn't have a lot of glue in them, but they stay together by the design that they are. And when you make one, there is just this huge. I have one at home in my temporary garage accommodation whilst we're rebuilding the house, and it's a pleasure to sit in. It's comfortable, and having made that chair is good. I think you can make lots of other pieces of furniture, but a chair is a new step in a way of woodworking that is not just normal 2 dimensions, straight and square. Nothing in a chair has got a square on it. It's very interesting. Boat building. We have a boat building academy locally, and when you do boat building, that's very similar to chair making. I see now the boat building furniture.
I think they're going to start doing a chair course, so that's the answer for some people.
Yeah.
But they're very good. I mean, boat building, furniture making, crafts. We still work with a lot of these. I mean, when we did the exhibition in the early days, we used to have the furniture. Well, it was exhibition. It wasn't just furniture, was it? It was. We used to celebrate the stuff they could make. It was great. And it was all sorts, wasn't it? It was
they had a lot of furniture, all sorts of different things, and people would bring furniture. And Rycote would submit a lot of furniture. But prisons would also submit some very good pieces. And, the thought was, or hope was, that people had really gained something with their woodwork whilst they were languishing in Her Majesty's prison. And also it was wood turning as well.
Wood turning, yeah.
So we had wood turning, carving, and furniture making, and they were very popular.
It was a big part of the exhibition. It was quite a draw, but it was great just to people to go and see and get inspired by it.
I think the inspiration was good, because people quite often wonder what they're going to make next in the workshop.
We still do it now. We do little bits in store, but we work with the young furniture makers. We sponsor that every year, so that's brilliant. That's showing the talent that's coming through and inspiring new talent. We still work with the wood turning, the Worshipful Company of Wood Turning, so another great thing we support, and Heritage Craft Association, which we've just started working with. So all sorts of craft. We're particularly focused on the woodwork part of it, but it's so varied. And Ian mentioned boat building. There's a lot of different techniques and lots of different skills, which are not realised and not always celebrated. So we're really keen to keep pushing on it.
And you support so many things like the Men's Shed Association. What connection? How important is the Men's Shed Association?
It's hugely, because it's great for us to get the products to those people. It isn't just men, but unfortunately men are more prone to mental health challenges. We do a lot within the company to support mental health. It's always been around, but it's a much more widely known thing now. But the Men's Sheds particularly, we just think is a great charity. It
gives all the people a sense of purpose, and of course,
community.
Like-minded people can join together. So we've a very active one in Axminster who have been 6 months or a year, 6 months.
They're nationwide. The UK MSA is more England, but they are connected with Wales and Scotland, and there's hundreds. I should know the exact number, but there are lots, and we try and support them as much as we can.
I think a lot of retired people struggle with retirement, and maybe they don't have such a sense of purpose, or they maybe live in a small house, flat, or something like this, and this gives them an opportunity to learn new skills, and also share their skill sets with others. So it's pretty neat, and the guys who are in it really enjoy what they do.
So I think that brings us to current day. Can you talk about any future plans, any goals, and what do you see Axminster, and what do you envision Axminster doing in the future?
In some ways, it's much the same. We're still very focused on woodworking, supporting community. All the things we've just talked about. But we want to grow more globally. Ian touched on making more in Britain. The global supply chain has become more challenging. It has been for a few years for various reasons around the globe. Make more, export more. We still have to get stuff from around the world. We've still got some very good relationships around the world. So, we want to build upon those, but continue to become much more focused on the range we offer and grow the knowledge sharing and the community support that we do. And of course, systems. The systems are ever evolving, what we do digitally. And the culture within the company just needs to continue growing. We have different committees now. Environmental committee is a big one. We've just got our Planet Mark certification, so that's that will give us a lot more targets to hit. We've just got a good business charter, so making sure we are behaving very responsibly, which I believe we always have done. We're a family business, so we've always had that way of working, but it's now becoming more recognised. I'd like to think we were a little bit ahead of the curve in behaving responsibly, but now it's a bigger thing. So they're two areas, and just continue to develop our staff and help our customers in their knowledge.
I think in the next year, if not 2 years, we will probably see the biggest step change for Axminster coming as to where we take where we're going to. And I think that my personal hope is is that is on high quality manufacturing, and we have some interesting things.
Secrets.
Yeah, a little top secrets that we hope will ultimately benefit the woodworking industry worldwide, and secure our jobs in Axminster and around, and at the same time bring a fresh and new wave of product to an industry that is probably hungry for you young guys. You are much better at grasping hold of new technology and quality products. Old school tended to stick with their old machines and chisels they'd had forever, and planes that they've lasted forever. But I would hope that with our new manufacturing, with our investment in manufacturing, I should say, because we have just recently moved our manufacturing from some units where there was really very little space in between each machine, and we have invested millions of pounds into the automation of our turn components, and I think that we can continue on with that, and perhaps in the words of Pneumatic, take our own workshops and become world-class manufacturers, and hold our own destiny, and make sure that we are always producing the very best quality that people aspire to. Because something's not good. I mean, is a square? It's got to be spot on square, hasn't it? And I think that we can start to answer those things. There's been way too many low-cost tools which are a waste of money. Do not waste your money on a poor quality chisel. Do not waste your money on a poor quality handsaw. There are much better tools out there, and maybe if we can stop people buying poor quality and encourage them to buy good quality.
We've got some very good partners around the world, but tools are quite traditional, but there is a lot of innovation happening. Like Ian said, that people are much more open to new ways of working than ever they used to be. We continue along that path. There's innovation all over now. That's we want to keep. That's our focus, is making sure we've got the innovative, better quality, working with the more discerning customer, and that's the way we'll continue to go.
I think the future is very exciting, definitely.
I think we have to make it exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for chatting today. I want to say thank you, I guess, for not giving up with the struggles at the beginning, and making this great company that we will have access to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and I hope that we can continue to do good stuff. That's what it's all about.
It's been great. It's been great looking back and thinking about things. It's challenging times, as I keep telling everyone, but we've still got some great objectives and vision for the future.
50 years is a long time.
Yeah,
but it seems like yesterday.
Join us again next time for another episode of Out of the Woodwork. For more episodes, to listen and subscribe, search for Out of the Woodwork on all major podcast sites, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And for more woodworking project guides, demos, tools, reviews, and more, visit www.axminstertools.com.